Beyond the mountains of Hertshaw lies a paradise of fertile fields. After the primordial inhabitants of this region disappeared without a trace, few have stood in the presence of it, fearing the myths and fears created around it. One of those myths speaks of the curse of Rhines, the great astromancer. It is said he studied the sky and formulated powerful portents. He foresaw many things before they came to be, and became famous for it. Envy of his natural abilities and his resistance to chaos influence, Tzeentch found the way to blind him. After he died, his fellow kin kept his mummified eyes and followed his teachings, thwarting many invasions and preventing several coups from secret chaos-worshipping sects. Then silence invaded the valley, and they disappeared. Today, chaos walks this ground again. The great manipulator wants to get the hold of Ryan's eyes, and has sent his fanatical legion to search for it. As always, in the mortal realms, risk can become reward very quickly. But whose? The Summoner's Guild is quietly burning his way through a village when the sound of waves echoes all around. This comes as a surprise to many, as they are miles away from the nearest body of water. The elves do not take long to manifest, riding their ferocious sea creatures into a well-designed ambush. At the helm of their flood is a bright, scaly armored warrior. As his kin takes position around him, he points his polearm at the tall greater demon and launches the battle.
Your greed makes for an excellent hunting opportunity.
Let's see if you can predict what happens next.
For the high tide!
The battle tactic is Call for Change. The Lord of Change activates the Demon Spark and generates 3 fate points. The Achillean King activates Heroic Leadership. The Orgroid casts Arcane Suggestion. The Magister on Disc casts Purple Sun. The Magister casts Mystic Shield on the Acolytes. The Acolytes cast Gestalt Sorcery. The Acolytes cast Gestalt Sorcery. The Magister on Disc casts Hoarfrost on the Zangors for -2 to rend. The Lord of Change casts Arcane Bolt. The Lord of Change casts Umbral Spell Portal. The Magister casts Rupture. Tzeentch uses 2 Destiny dice. The Acolyte activate at the double. Tzeentch summons the Lord of Change. The Incarnate dispels the Umbral spell portal, rising 1 level. Tzeentch scores 4 victory points. The battle tactic is Endless Expropriation. The Achillean King activates Heroic Willpower and dispels the Purple Sun. The Magister activates Finest Hour. The Soulscryer, the Reavers and the Leviathan Deep Strike. The Reavers deal 8 damage to the Acolytes. The Reavers deal 2 damage to the Incarnate. The Allopax finishes off the Acolytes. The Allopax deals 1 damage to the Incarnate. The other Allopax deals 3 damage to the Incarnate. The Soulscryer deals 2 damage to the Acolytes. The Leviathan activates all-out attack and deals 1 damage to the Acolytes. The Leviathan activates Forward to Victory. The Leviathan fails to activate Stomp. The Leviathan activates all-out attack. The Magister activates all-out defense. The Leviathan finishes off the Magister and finishes off the Acolytes. Idoneth score 3 victory points. The battle tactic is Magical Dominance. The Lord of Change activates Heroic Leadership. The Achillean King activates Heroic Willpower and dispels the Burning Sigil of Tzeentch. The Magister on disc casts Hoarfrost on the Zangors for a -2 to rend. The Magister on disc casts Purple Sun. The Lord of Change casts Umbral Spell Portal. The Lord of Change casts Infernal Gateway and deals 8 damage to the Leviathan. The Lord of Change casts Mystic Shield on the Zangors. The Lord of Change casts Arcane Bolt. The Achillean King activates Redeploy on the Alapex. The Lord of Change finishes off the Aether Wings. The Achillean King activates Unleash Hell on the Alapex that deals no damage to the Incarnate. The Achillean King activates All-Out Defense on the Alapex. The Incarnate finishes off both Alapexes. Tzeentch scores 4 victory points. The battle tactic is Revenge of the Namarti. The Achillean King activates Heroic Willpower, but fails to dispel the Purple Sun. The Lord of Change dispels the Umbral Spell Portal. The Lord of Change activates Finest Hour. The Achillean King activates at the double. The Lord of Change activates Redeploy. The Alapex fails to deal any damage to the Lord of Change. The Alapex deals 4 damage to the Lord of Change. The Leviathan fails to deal any damage to the Lord of Change. The Reavers deal 5 damage to the Lord of Change. The Reavers finish off the Lord of Change. The Soul Scryer deals 3 damage to the Incarnate. The Reavers deal 7 damage to the Incarnate. The Incarnate loses 1 level. The Idoneth score 3 victory points. The battle tactic is Reprisal. The Lord of Change activates Heroic Leadership. The Achillean King activates Heroic Willpower and dispels the Purple Sun. The Soul Scryer activates Pouch of Null Dust. The Lord of Change casts Infernal Gateway on the Leviathan and deals 7 damage. The Lord of Change casts Bolt of Tzeentch and finishes off the Leviathan. The Magister on disc casts Burning Sigil of Tzeentch. The Magister on disc casts Bolt of Change on the Alapex, dealing 1 damage. The Orgroid casts Choking Tendrils, dealing 6 damage to the Alapex. The Reavers activate Redeploy. The Burning Sigil of Tzeentch deals 1 damage to the Achillean King and 1 damage to the Reavers. The Lord of Change deals 2 damage to the Alapex. The Lord of Change fails to activate Stomp. The Incarnate activates Roar on the Reavers. The Reavers deal 3 damage to the Zangors. The Alapex deals 2 damage to the Zangors. The Reavers deal 1 damage to the Chaos Spawn. The Alapex deals 4 damage to the Lord of Change. The Zangors deal 6 damage to the Reavers and finish off the Alamex. The Lord of Change deals 2 damage to the Alamex. The Ogroid finishes off the Alapex. The Chaos Spawn deals 1 damage to the Reavers. The Incarnate finishes off the Reavers. Tzeentch used the Destiny Dice for Battle Shock on the Zangors. Reavers activate Inspiring Presence. Tzeentch scores 2 victory points. The battle tactic is Assassins of the High Tide. So my Achillean King got his revenge. He went into the middle of those characters and just wiped out the Ogroid and the Magister on disc. It was failing to kill the Lord of Change though. Then the Namarti Reavers dropped a level on the Incarnate, but the Incarnate then went into them and buff. They disappeared. And finally the fight between the Zangors and the remaining Namarti Reavers went into the Zangors' favor. Well, hi there. Another battle report from our channel, namely one that has been kind of a staple of ours. So, Disciples of Tzeentch versus Idoneth Deepkin. We've done this twice, 3 times already over the course of the last couple of years. It's always a very interesting matchup because they're both factions that heavily lean into one of the phases of the game or a couple of phases of the game. So it's always interesting to see how one outmatches the other in terms of exploiting that extreme investment in terms of game phases. Let's go over to the lists really quick. I'm trying to get this speaking segment as short as I can to avoid some of you falling asleep. So let's go over to the lists. The Disciples of Tzeentch brought a Guild of Summoners list, which obviously relies on summoning a lot of greater demons, Lord of Changes, and they basically flooded, my opponent flooded the list with wizards, some of them double casting wizards so that he gets the most fate points as he can. The first Lord of Change is summoned when he reaches 9 fate points, and the other ones are 18. But he does this very quickly because his command trait is basically giving him 3 fate points once per game for free. He obviously casts an endless spell automatically at the beginning of the game, so that's another 1. So he starts with 4 fate points, so it's very easy to summon a Lord of Change with this amount of wizards on the first turn, and that's exactly what he did. Then you have a Magister, besides the Lord of Change, of course, which is the general. You have a Magister, you have another Magister on a disc. 20 points for a fly move, and an extra move is great. Then you have the Ogroid, and then you have minimum battle line, basically. 2 units of Acolytes and 1 unit of Zangors, and the Kronspine Incarnate. So couple that with 3 endless spells, Umbral Spell Portal, Purple Sun, and Burning Sigil. He has a lot of flexibility during the hero phase to not only feed the Incarnate very easily, especially in this edition where you have Rupture, and he can cast Rupture very easily. He has it on one of his Magisters. But also to he's very flexible in terms of what he can cast and what he can do, either to get range for his Mortal Wound spells or reduce the armor save of a specific unit. The Kronspine does a lot of work in this list. It seems like a small, fragile list because it's almost all small characters, heroes, and then you have the Lord of Change and just units that are relatively fragile. They don't have enough armor save to survive that much. But the Kronspine is constantly being fed and constantly increasing his level. So he works very well with this list. And he can even boost the first turn because he's giving a bonus to wizards, to a wizard that he's bonded to before he gets ruptured, casted into it. Idoneth Deepkin, I was playing this faction, Iron Wrath. To be honest, I was doubtful between Iron Wrath and the other sub-factions, but I think Iron Wrath delivers a lot more flexibility in terms of when I have a unit stuck in melee, bringing it out of melee and charging elsewhere, and this is especially true for the Achillean King and the Leviathan. But also, I think that the list behaves very well without needing to have the Leviathan get to Rend 3 on one of its attacks or getting the Alopexes to battle line. Maybe the Alopexes to battle line would be a nice change of a subfaction, but I went with this one. The Achillean King has the typical competitive setup: an Unstoppable Fury, Armored of the Sithai, and Void Shield Darkness. He's a machine, a killing machine, although a very fragile one. We all know this. All Idoneth Deepkin players, apart from Namarti heavy lists, use this guy as a general, and even in Namarti heavy lists they use it. Then you have a Soul Scryer that allows me to at least safeguard a couple of units from damage and putting them into a deep strike. He has the Curse Prayer, which is very useful sometimes. And I wanted to try out one of the Nullstone Adornments enhancements called the Pouch of Nulldust, that basically gets all enemy wizards during a phase miscasting on double 1, double 2, and double 3, and dispels endless spells on 5+. Then it's shooting. 3 units of Namarti Reavers, 4 Achillean Alopexes, one of them has the Retarius Nets, 3 Aetherwings just to screen out because I love Aetherwings in Order armies. They're very cheap and you can easily get 1 or 2 victory points out of them and screen your army in some way, so they're very good at allowing you to save some damage on your main units, which are already fragile. They are elves. And then you have the Leviathan with the reverberating carapace, also a traditional setup. I always struggle to do Idoneth Deepkin lists because I do think the eels, which were the main option during a lot of what AOS used to be when they were launched, they are just really outdated for the damage output of armies these days. So damage 2, Rend 2 when you charge is like nothing nowadays, and the moral wounds once per game, it's also very outdated. So although they've been decreasing their points, I still do not feel comfortable investing on units of 3 models with 4 wounds each, saving on a 4+. I know they're mobile, I know they can do a lot of things. Maybe if you have a lot of them, maybe if you have a list built around them, but I honestly think the competitive choice is Reavers, Alopexes, and the Leviathan. Not necessarily in this setup because it's too extreme into shooting and too fragile to resist, but I do think I'd rather take 2 Leviathans than eels at this moment. So that's a sign of how bad things are for eels, although I know some people like them a lot. The battle plan itself, we hadn't played this one yet. It's the one with the wizard towers, with the where you choose a defensible terrain piece to count as something that you need to control at the end of the game. Mixed feelings. I think it's interesting. It's an interesting battle plan, but some factions might struggle a little bit with controlling that terrain and not having it smashed to rubble for your garrison not to be expelled from there. I don't know. It's still early. We've just played this game. It wasn't decided based on that. But even though it wasn't decided based on that, I still think it's tricky for some factions to play this battle plan, and I know some people don't like it. So I'll have to have more games into it, because otherwise I won't have a sufficiently consistent opinion on it. As the game itself, for the game itself. First turn was very... all of the hero phases from my opponent were basically perfect. I don't think he ever failed a single cast, and he did cast a lot of spells. So between the two Magisters, and he always risked the second spell with the Magisters, by the way. If you hadn't already noticed, he does 2 spells with the Magisters always, and the second spell that you do with them has 2 conditions. One, the first spell that you did with him was successful, and the second condition is that they don't roll a double unless, because if they roll a double they are slain and the spell doesn't go in. He never rolled a double, so it's basically all the hero phases went exactly as a Tzeentch player would want it to be. High casts or enough casts. I didn't have that much in the way of defending against magic, but even if I had, I wouldn't have been able to dispel or unbind most of the things that he did. I actually dispelled the Purple Sun twice without needing a primal dice, because I was lucky, because otherwise my heroic willpower wouldn't play any role in this game. It was just basically piling up on fate points, doing damage whenever you can, and buffing units. So that was... his hero phases were flawless. He didn't even need that much fate dice to help out. So it was good. I had a problem from the start. My biggest problem was not the damage output of his spells. It was not that he summoned Lord of Change. It was the Incarnate. And my problem with the Incarnate was he would need a lot of work to bring down. He gets to level 3 almost instantly on turn 1, almost automatically. So you need 3 turns or very, very unlucky dice from my opponent to bring him down. And he gets ruptured turn 1. So he's running and charging from the start. This for a shooting army that, okay, has some mobility, but it cannot get out of the way of a 12-inch plus d6 run and charge beast, was basically what much of what decided the game. I always knew, and I constantly know this with Idoneth Deepkin. Idoneth Deepkin lists usually are very prone to either get a lot of damage through when they get a double turn, because they have a lot of shooting potential. They lean a lot in either to shooting or to melee, especially when you get the Achillean King in and he gets the high tides to a couple of units, but also suffers a lot from double turns because it doesn't have a great variety of cheap screens. It doesn't have the ability to redeploy multiple times. It's always tricky to get in range of the shooting, especially with the Reavers, and not be charged if you get double turned after that. So it's, and all of your things are relatively fragile. So you don't have lots of units that can serve as an anvil efficiently, that can stop a double turn, with perhaps the exception of the Leviathan. You don't have that much in terms of resistance. Not using eels is also a disadvantage because of that, because the eels that ignore rend are relatively useful to use as screens. But I really wanted to lean into the shooting, and so the Incarnate was an issue. And it was an issue turn 1. Although he didn't charge turn 1, he was already at level 3 in turn 1. I think I was a little bit unlucky during my first turn that I didn't drop a level on him, because I did shoot a lot at him, and I did try to get him to a level where I was pretty sure my opponent would roll below his wounds, but I wasn't able to damage him that much. Honestly, my dice were not that good at shooting, and he saved a lot, so not being able to drop a level on him that turn, even if I got the double turn, which I didn't, would have been complicated, because he would just increase a level next turn, because my opponent would cast something to somewhere where he would be during the charge phase, and he would just rampage and eat the endless spell and increase the level. So it was very tricky. My first turn was I got 2 turns where I was just suffering a lot to get the battle tactics. So it's also a sign of times where you don't bring wizards, you don't bring heavy magic, and all of a sudden 2 or 3 of your battle tactics, reliable battle tactics or possible battle tactics, go out the window. So I didn't bring any wizards, so a lot of battle tactics rely on magic or having something killed through magic or something like that. I had to struggle a lot to get my battle tactic turn 1, which was to kill one of his wizards that was controlling an endless spell. Not only was it hard because, again, my shooting was miserable during that turn, but also because I had to dedicate the Leviathan and the Reavers and the Soulscryer to that cause. And to be honest, this was partially because of the battle tactic and partially because my opponent defended very well against the Deep Strike, but I narrowly managed it. So it was very hard. I did get it. I did make a small mistake with the Aether Wings. I should have ran 6 inches with them. They were just outside of an inch of that objective, so I only scored 3 victory points because they rolled a 1 when they ran, so they didn't get to the objective on the left side. But otherwise, I did my best to get that battle tactic and hope for a double turn, which didn't happen. So my opponent won the roll, and he chose to go first. I don't have any wizards, so I don't have any bonuses to go second. Actually, I basically went through the turn trying to survive the Incarnate, trying to manage the Incarnate and trying to manage the damage output that he had, at least with his Lord of Change that was in range of my Leviathan through the Umbral spell portal. Now, to be honest, his damage output during the hero phase was above average, so we rolled 9 dice, he got 7 wounds into the Leviathan. The Leviathan is also always tricky in these types of games because he suffers a lot from mortal wounds. But other than that, he killed some of the Aether Wings. He got the Incarnate into, again, I didn't play that well with screening because I only had, I didn't know where the Incarnate was going to be, so I only had the Alopexes to screen. I did play it less efficiently in the right flank with the 2 Alopexes. I should have put one behind the other. So he reached the two of them, and he killed both of them. Just narrowly managed to kill both of them, which was in the end was relevant. But the second turn, basically, he consolidated. He increased his pile of fate points. He dealt with 2 Alopexes. He damaged the Leviathan. He brought his troops forward into my territory. Basically, not too much forward because he knew I had a lot of shooting, and I had the Achillean King. During my turn, I had to achieve 3 things. The first one was my battle tactic, which was again hard to achieve because I needed to kill a unit with either one of the most reliable battle tactics I had, and I wanted to leave some of the easy ones to the end of the match. One of the viable ones was destroying a unit with an Amarty unit of mine. The other one was destroying a unit that was at full health with at least 8 wounds with an Alopex. Both were tricky because I had to ensure that it was that unit that destroyed it, not other units that, without the intention of doing it, would destroy the enemy unit. So I had to choose an Amarty Revenge. I did choose wisely because I managed damage quite well and got the one of the Lords of Change down, which was actually the general. But it was very hard for me to deal with the Incarnate. I didn't know what to do to the Incarnate because, again, he ran and charged and he was still at level 3. I did manage to drop a level on him, but I knew it was just temporary because if my opponent got the turn, again, he would increase it 1 level. I did manage my battle tactic. The second thing I wanted to do was to get the Achillean King into combat. He's very important during this turn, run and charge. I did run with him 6 inches. I was fairly confident I would get the charge. I was 6 inches away. I had +1 to charge. My mind slipped for a second, and I just spent the last command point. I realized I had spent the last command point on something else, so I ran out of command points. So I needed a 5 to get him into one of the Lords of Change. The other one was again dropped by the Namarti Reavers, and I rolled a 4. So I was unable to charge with him at very close range. This was decisive because I didn't bring down that Lord of Change. That Lord of Change in the next turn did a whole lot of damage. And again, I really needed to get to his heroes to stop the summoning, to stop the spells, to stop piling fate points. And I was unable to charge with him. I was relatively confident that they would kill the Lord of Change. She's a machine. But I didn't get that charge. So the second mission I had, I failed it. And the third one was to manage the Incarnate. The only way I thought would be reasonable to manage the Incarnate was to get an Alopex in his way, to allow him not to be able to charge into the Reavers without going first into the Alopex. But I really had an issue because he was very near both the Gloomspite boat, the boat, basically the terrain piece, this faction terrain piece for Idoneth, and he was relatively close to my wizard tower in this battle plan. So we could smash to rubble either of them, and I would be in a bad position. So I brought the Namarti Reavers out, and I tried to manage that just so that he would only destroy one of those things, and preferably be out of position to do so. I was relatively successful with it. He didn't get to the Namarti Reavers, but he did kill the Alopex, and he was central to my whole army. So if my opponent would win the turn, he would just be right smack in the middle. He could reach any of my units if he won the roll, which he did. So basically, I never won the initiative roll. I did my battle tactic. I did conquer one of the objectives, but I was unable to do 2 of the 3 things I had in mind for this turn. And for Idoneth, it's key to get all of these details in because they're not a forgiving army. You don't have any fallbacks. You don't have any redundancies that can allow you to just play it differently. You don't have any cheap screens or anything like that. In his turn, and again, to be honest, my shooting was not that great again during the second turn.
And in the third turn, basically, he dropped a Leviathan with spells. He did above average damage with the remaining spells that he had, and he was already in range. He actually failed his battle tactic because he needed to kill one of the Namarti Reaver units, but I redeployed very aggressively, and he wasn't able to kill it. But he had already destroyed the other Namarti Reavers. He had basically one Alopex left, and even though I had always strikes first, I was not doing that much damage because it was an Alopex here, Reavers there, and he managed to charge my Alopex without coming into 3 inches of the Achillean King in his combat phase. So basically, he wiped out some of my units, some of my key units. The Incarnate again went into the Namarti Reavers, destroyed a unit of Namarti Reavers, and he was basically down to killing my Achillean King and the Soul Scryer and the other Namarti Reaver units, basically. So in my third turn, which was when the camera malfunctioned, sorry for that, but I did a small summary. I finally got my revenge. I finally went in with the Achillean King. There are no pictures of that, but I can assure you he did a lot of damage. So he killed both of his mortal heroes, both the Ogroid and the Magister. He was unable to kill, so I went into the middle of those 3 heroes, his Lord of Change and those 2 heroes. He killed 2 of them, and he was unable to kill the Lord of Change, which was a shame. But again, we rolled off for the 4th turn, although I did get my battle tactic, which was to kill 2 or more units during the high tide. So I was getting my battle tactics in, although it was hard, I was getting them in. And I was not winning the initiative rolls, but I was doing my work, my job. I didn't make that many mistakes. But he won the roll again, so the 4th turn was just a dispatch. We don't have any pictures of that, but he just dispatched my Achillean King and the remaining Namarti Reaver units and the Soul Scry. So there was no history after the fact that I didn't get the double turn, neither in the 2nd or the 3rd round. Final conclusions. The Incarnate in this specific type of list is very strong. When he gets ruptured, he is a threat, and when you can feed him reliably with endless spells, is very much a machine, a killing machine. I do think I had a shot. Several times during the game, I felt like if my shooting was more efficient, if I got the double turn, or if I got that charge in, it would be a wholly completely different story. This game would be very different. I still believe that, but my opponent played very well. He managed space very well. He's also used to playing against Idoneth. We've done a couple of matches, as I said before. And I still believe this type of Idoneth list can be competitive. It needs to be well trained. It needs to have some sort of a spark during the game that allows it to efficiently work. So you need average dice. You need sometimes a double turn. Of course, it's very fragile to magic. Of course, it's very dependent on the type of opponent and the type of faction that you face. But I still believe it has a lot of potential. As for the Tzeentch army, it's basically a traditional build with the Incarnate that does very well. I'm pretty sure some factions deal with this better than others. Heavy magic factions won't allow you to cast that Rupture spell that easily, or will be able to stop the Incarnate from doing certain things through spells, or just don't allow you to cast that many spells and don't summon a Lord of Change on the first turn. Very interesting game. I'm pretty sure we'll have a rematch someday. The next battle reports will be very interesting. Stay tuned. One is with Slaves to Darkness. The other one is with OBR from my side, and then you'll check out the opponents when we air those episodes. I'm back in business, so let's see each other very soon again. And thank you for watching. Keep liking our videos. Again, YouTube is the boss here, so if you like our videos, if you share them, if you comment, nice things will happen to us, and we'll be able to produce more and to do to not be that much time between battle reports. Thanks a lot, and see you soon.